Hello everyone, Samia here. I want to welcome you to the Friday edition of News Now. Again, it is Friday. You're watching News Now here on the Fox 10 Phoenix stream, and you are looking at live aerials coming in from Florida. A sinkhole that started out the size of a small swimming pool but continued to grow has swallowed a home in Florida and severely damaged another. A home swallowed by the sinkhole, another home severely damaged. Now, according to the Pasco County Fire Chief, who held a news conference earlier today, crews were called to the home this morning after someone noticed a depression had formed under a boat parked outside a house. Within minutes, he says, the hole opened up. Now, the fire chief says that the residents living in that home had left for work, but firefighters rescued 2 dogs and retrieved some of the home's belongings. About an hour later, part of the house had collapsed, and an hour after that, the sinkhole had swallowed most of the home and a portion of the one next door. County building officials have deemed about 10 homes unsafe and say more in this area could be affected. again, for those of you just joining us, these are some very interesting visuals. What a sight there out of Land O'Lakes, Florida. A sinkhole that started out as just the size of a small swimming pool, but continued to grow, has now swallowed up an entire home and swallowed part of another home, severely damaging both homes. Pasco County Fire Chief Sean Whitehead held a news conference and said that crews were called to this home just north of Tampa at about 7:30 this morning after someone noticed a depression had formed under a boat parked outside a house. Now, within minutes, he says, the hole opened up. Now, thankfully, the residents had already left for work at the time that the home was swallowed, but firefighters did have to rescue 2 dogs, and they were able to retrieve some of the home's belongings. By 8:30, part of the house had collapsed, and by 9:30 Florida time, the sinkhole had already swallowed most of the home and a portion of the one next door. It's now about 12:06 in the afternoon there in Florida. They are 3 hours ahead of us here in Arizona. We are learning from county officials that about 10 homes in this area are deemed unsafe, and it's possible that more homes in the area could be affected by this sinkhole. According to the Tampa Bay Times, the local energy provider has cut power to about 100 homes in the neighborhood because of this sinkhole. Hello everyone, Samia here. I just want to give you a quick update for those of you just joining us who may have not heard the other update. You are looking at live pictures coming in right now from Florida. It is such a sight to see. This giant sinkhole has completely swallowed one home, partially swallowed another, and up to 10 homes in the area could be affected by this sinkhole. Now this situation is taking place in Lando Lakes, Florida, which is just north of Tampa, Florida. We learned from a news conference this morning that authorities initially got a report at 7:30 about a depression that had formed near a boat parked outside a house. Now, the sinkhole had started out just the size of a small swimming pool, and within minutes it opened up, and it is massive now. It has swallowed an entire home, partially swallowed another. We're going to continue to monitor the situation. As far as whether anyone was injured or not, thankfully the residents of the home that was swallowed were already out of the home this morning. They were at work at the time that the home was swallowed, but rescuers did need to go in and save the family's dogs, as well as retrieve some of the home's belongings. So again, we're going to monitor the situation out of Florida. We appreciate everyone tuning in here on Fox 10 News. All right, for those of you just joining us, these are some pretty crazy images coming in from Land O'Lakes, Florida. Land O'Lakes is just north of Tampa. You can see really it's just some devastating images. Fortunately, no one was hurt as this sinkhole swallowed a home and partially swallowed another next door. Now, the sinkhole started out as the size of a swimming pool and continued to grow. Officials said this morning that the crews were called to this home at around 7:30 Tampa time after someone noticed a depression had formed under a boat parked outside a house. Within minutes, he says, the hole opened up. Now, the residents had already left for work, but firefighters were able to rescue 2 dogs and retrieve some of the home's belongings. By 8:30 this morning, part of the house had collapsed, and an hour later, the sinkhole had swallowed most of the home and a portion of the one next door. Again, according to county building officials, about 10 homes in the area have been deemed unsafe, and it's possible that more homes could be affected. We also know that the local energy company, Duke Energy, has cut power to about 100 homes in the area. Now, this latest update coming in on the Associated Press wires just a few minutes ago, we're learning that a Florida home that was swallowed up by the ground where a previous sinkhole was has been stabilized. Now, the hole, again, was the size of a small swimming pool when crews arrived this morning, but quickly grew to over 200 feet wide and 50 meters deep. 50 feet deep. 200 feet wide and 50 feet deep. By 9:30 this morning, Tampa time, about 3 hours ago, the home had fallen into a sinkhole. Again, the reports are that the residents were not inside the home, but firefighters did have to rescue dogs and remove some of the residents' belongings. The representative from the County Emergency Management Office told reporters that this scene was frightening to watch. It was frightening to watch the home disappear into the sinkhole. Now, property records note a sinkhole confirmed in 2012 as stabilized. This home was sold in 2015. Hello everyone, Samia here. I just want to give you guys a quick update for those viewers that are just joining us who may not know exactly what they're looking at. Well, it's a giant sinkhole there in Lando Lakes, Florida. This sinkhole has already swallowed an entire home and partially swallowed another home. We know that this sinkhole has now grown to about 200 feet wide and that it has swallowed two homes and emptied a Pasco County neighborhood this morning as it's growing. So obviously residents in the area are evacuating. We're hearing from officials that up to or approximately 10 homes in the area could be affected by this sinkhole. We know this home is on the 21,000 block of Ocean Pines Drive there in Lando Lakes, Florida. It fell into a watery hole this morning, and this muddy pit has now claimed most of a neighboring home as well. Firefighters say they got this 911 call just after 7 this morning, and the hole just grew after that. Initially, it was reported as a hole that's just the size of a small swimming pool, but as you can see, it is massive. You see a mess of you guys can see the mess of mud and debris there at the scene. Deputies have actually cordoned off a portion of this neighborhood and are only allowing residents with ID into the area to simply get valuables from their evacuated homes. And in some cases, they have to be accompanied by firefighters to get those belongings. Again, this home that you're looking at is 220 feet wide and 50 feet deep, and officials are saying that they expect this hole to continue to grow. Fortunately, no injuries have been reported. The people who lived in the home that initially sunk were already gone for work at the time that the home was swallowed. Firefighters at the scene were able to rescue two dogs as well as some of the belongings to the residents of that home. All right, for those of you just joining us, you are witnessing a very crazy sight there out of Land O'Lakes, Florida. This is a community just north of Tampa. A sinkhole that started off as the size of a small swimming pool has grown to 220 feet wide, 50 feet deep, and officials say that this sinkhole will continue to grow. It's already swallowed one home entirely, part of another home, and it's possible that it could threaten up to 10 homes in this area. Residents have been forced to evacuate. Some residents allowed back in only if they show ID that they live there, and oftentimes accompanied by firefighters, only allowed into the area to retrieve their belongings. Again, this is a very scary situation for any resident in this area. Fortunately, there have been no injuries. The individuals that live inside the home that has been swallowed were already out of the house. They were at work at the time when the sinkhole swallowed their home. Firefighters did have to rescue 2 dogs from the sinkhole as well as some of the residents' belongings. It is just a crazy sight to see. I mean, looking at these aerials, you're looking at this massive sinkhole, 220 feet wide, 50 feet deep. It's just a fortunate situation in the sense that no one was injured. But of course, if you are the owner of that home, if you're a resident there, you're watching as, you know, that's your life and it's gone, and it's an unfortunate scene, but we will continue to monitor it here on News Now and continue to give you guys updates as they become available. And I just want to give a shout out to all the viewers tuning in on YouTube and Facebook. I know many people commenting on this story, sharing their thoughts. If you have something that you want to share regarding this story, feel free to leave that in the comment section on YouTube or Facebook, and we may read some of your comments here on air as we continue to watch this event unfold live in Florida, just north of Tampa. A sinkhole that has swallowed an entire home, most of another home, and continues to grow. A very scary situation there in Florida. Viewers, we appreciate you tuning in, and we want to integrate you into this story, so feel free to leave your comments, and we'll read some of those on air in just a couple minutes. some viewers wondering how it could be 50 feet deep from their point of view. One viewer on YouTube, D. Gargan, you said it's 50 feet deep, but it looks like 5 to 6 feet deep. Is that because it's like quicksand or something? Yeah, you can see that all that's left is the very top of the home. You can just see the roof at the very surface of the sinkhole there. Now, some viewers wanting to know more about sinkholes, how they work exactly, how they're formed. This information coming in from the U.S. Geological Service. Sinkholes are common where the rock below the land surface is limestone, carbonate rock, salt beds, or rocks that can naturally be dissolved by groundwater circulating through them. As the rocks dissolve, spaces and caverns develop underground. Now, sinkholes are dramatic because the land usually stays intact for a while until the underground spaces just get too big. And if there's not enough support for the land above the spaces, then a sudden collapse of the land surface can occur. These collapses can be small or as this live video shows, it can be huge, and it can occur where a house or a road is on top. Now, the most damage from sinkholes actually tend to be in just a handful of states, Florida being one of them. The situation in Florida is what you're looking at now, but in addition to Florida, you have Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania that suffer the most damage from sinkholes. Now, a sinkhole is an area of ground that has no natural external surface drainage. Now, when it rains, all of the water stays inside the sinkhole and typically drains into the subsurface. Sinkholes can vary, again, from a few feet to hundreds of acres and from less than 1 to more than 100 feet deep. Some sinkholes are shaped like shallow bowls or saucers, whereas others have vertical walls. Some hold water and form natural ponds. Now, typically, sinkholes form so slowly that little change is noticeable, but they can form suddenly when a collapse occurs. Such a collapse can have a dramatic effect if it occurs in an urban setting. As you can see, this sinkhole obviously creating a very dramatic effect as it was right next to a home, under a home, an entire home swallowed by this sinkhole, another home mostly swallowed by the sinkhole, with many other homes in the area threatened by this sinkhole that, according to officials, will just continue to grow. Now, some of you may be wondering, can sinkholes be human-induced? That is correct, they can be. New sinkholes have been correlated to land use practices, especially from groundwater pumping and from construction and development practices. Sinkholes can also form when natural water drainage patterns are changed and new water diversion systems are developed. Now, some sinkholes, from when the land surface is changed, such as some sinkholes form when the land surface is changed, such as when industrial and runoff storage ponds are created. Now, the substantial weight of the new material can trigger an underground collapse of the supporting material, thus causing a sinkhole. I do have some interesting pictures from the U.S. Geological Service that show you just how sinkholes form, how they work. So I may go ahead and show you guys that in just a moment, if you want some graphic images for how exactly a sinkhole forms. All right, everyone, in the corner of your screen, I'm going to play this video from the U.S. Geological Service that tells about the science of sinkholes. It's a brief discussion on sinkholes and the related science provided by the director of the USGS Eastern Geology and Paleoclimate Science Center. So you guys will have a better understanding of just exactly how sinkholes work. Let me go ahead and play this video for you now. Stand by.
Hi, I'm Randall Orndorff, a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Lately, there have been quite a few sinkholes that have developed across the United States. One recently has taken a life. I'd like to take a moment just to talk about what sinkholes are and where they occur. Well, sinkholes generally occur in what we call karst terrains. And karst terrains are basically areas that are underlain by soluble rock. Rocks that can dissolve, like limestone, gypsum, and salt. Rainwater naturally is acidic. When it gets underground into these rocks, over long periods of times, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years, the rocks will dissolve and will leave caverns and voids underground. As these voids grow upward, the soil on top can no longer sustain itself, and we get these catastrophic collapses. Now, about 20% of the United States is underlain by this karst terrain. Areas such as Florida, almost the entire state is under limestone. But there are many other areas. Just about every state has some sort of soluble rock. Now, karst sinkholes, there's also other types of sinkholes that are man-induced. Cities, urban areas are underlain by pipelines, by sewer lines, water mains, and things like that are basically man-made caves. So anytime you have a void underground, just like the natural cave system, you have the potential for collapse. As our aging infrastructure deteriorates, we're finding that cracks in these sewer lines and water mains will cause the soil to leak down into those, also causing collapse. Now, at the U.S. Geological Survey, one of our big tools in trying to understand where sinkholes occur are geologic maps. By mapping the geology of an area, we can determine where the limestones, the salt or gypsum, these soluble rocks are, both at the surface and the subsurface. And that's the first step in understanding what areas are at risk. And risk is the first thing we need to look at before we can actually look at individual areas. For more information on sinkholes, on geologic maps, and other natural hazards, please visit usgs.gov.
All right, everyone, so we just wanted to share that with you, courtesy of the U.S. Geological Service there, the science of sinkholes. Now, a few years ago, a devastating sinkhole occurred in Florida in 2013. What's interesting is around 20% of the United States lies in areas susceptible to sinkhole events, which highlights the need for research and for people to be informed about this potential hazard. Again, areas most susceptible to sinkholes are Florida, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. Areas where water levels have lowered suddenly are more prone to collapse formation. Again, for those of you just joining us, let's recap the information we know so far. Obviously, you can see on your screen that homes have been swallowed by a giant sinkhole. This is a massive sinkhole, and unfortunately, it is continuing to grow. It is a sinkhole in Florida, Land O'Lakes, Florida. This is just north of Tampa. This hole started off as the size of a small swimming pool when crews arrived this morning, but quickly grew to over 200 feet wide and 50 meters deep. By 9:30 this morning, Florida time, the home had fallen into a sinkhole. The representative from the County Emergency Management Office said that this scene was frightening to watch as the home disappeared into the hole. So again, Pasco County officials were called to this home north of Tampa at about 7:30 Florida time after someone noticed a depression had formed under a boat parked outside a house. Within minutes, that hole opened up. We know that by 8:30 Florida time, part of the home had collapsed, and by 9:30, the sinkhole had swallowed most of the home. Thankfully, no one was hurt in this collapse, as the residents of the home that was swallowed were already at work at the time of the incident. Firefighters did have to rescue 2 dogs, however, and they were able to also retrieve some of the home's belongings. Now, county officials have deemed about 10 homes in this area of Land O'Lakes, Florida, unsafe, and Pasco County officials do say that more homes could be affected. It is a very unfortunate scene there in Florida. Florida, one of a handful of states most affected by sinkholes here in the U.S. Joining me now is the one and only Ron Hoon. Ron, you have been on this story all morning on the morning show.
Yep.
You are so kind that you are willing to forego your lunch break
Yes,
to
right.
come sit with us to talk about the situation that is just shocking there in Florida. I mean, this sinkhole continues to grow. At last count, it was 220 feet wide,
Yeah.
50 feet deep, and authorities are saying that it will continue to grow.
I'll just say this, Samia. We, out here in the newsroom, we're a pretty, I don't know if jaded is the word, but experienced group. We've seen it all.
You've seen it all.
We've seen it all.
Right.
So when these feeds come in, 99 times out of 100, people don't spend a lot of time just walking up to the feed on the monitor because it's sort of unbelievable. But I've been seeing that. This is just a little sort of inside baseball behind the scenes. I've been seeing that all morning as people walk by and practically do a double take because they just can't believe what they're seeing.
Right, and I've seen sinkholes that end up being massive, but they're, in the middle of the road. This is a completely different situation where a home has been completely swallowed, another home mostly swallowed.
Yes.
And we're hearing at least 10 other homes could possibly be affected by this.
Yeah, you got 100 homes that have had the power knocked out. You've got emergency personnel on hand. Wish I knew what direction we were looking here. I got this geographical brain, so I got to go right to the maps. We are basically about 15 miles due north of downtown Tampa. And it's interesting when you get on Google Maps and you actually look at Land O'Lakes.
Well, I can actually pull up the address,
Oh,
the
good.
exact address on Google Maps.
There you go. Let's do it. It looks like a pretty quiet community, and it's not like it's in a swamp or anything, but it is just surrounded by little lakes, shallow little lakes throughout this
Interesting.
community. And
I know a lot of our viewers are saying, well, the town is called Land O'Lakes.
yep, no
A
shocker
lot of
there.
comments being
Yeah.
made about that, but here is
Oh, that's a really great image to show everybody.
yeah,
what we're
so you
talking
have the
about
home
here.
right here, and yeah, lots of water in that area. This is the exact home.
Okay.
That is the address, and some viewers might want to know what the home looked like before the incident.
Here we go.
So
Look at that.
this was the home.
Living the dream life. A lot of people dream of being in Florida someday.
And what's interesting is that someone noticed that there was this depression underneath a boat. I'm wondering if that's the boat where they noticed the initial depression. I mean, it might be, it might not be, but we do know that officials were initially called to the home because someone noticed a depression there, and within minutes of officials arriving, the hole just grew
Wow.
and grew and grew.
Wow.
So that's what it looked like.
Matter of fact, if I recall,
That's what it looks like from an aerial point of view, guys.
yeah, look at that.
Now look
Nice
at that, and now
homes.
look at this aerial view, except our chopper somehow decided to just cut away from the scene. I don't know if the chopper is leaving to refuel
Probably.
or not, but let's go back to these pictures from Google Maps.
And right across the street are houses that are waterfront property. Look at that.
Right, you have the water
know?
right there.
That's where the water is supposed to be. It is not supposed to be doing what it is
Right
doing
here.
on the other side.
Right, it is a very concerning situation there.
Yeah. So, could be a bedroom community for Tampa, could be a retirement area as well. But, man, it's the part about looking at the aerial pictures that they've been providing us all day is just that there's really nothing you can do. I mean, you feel bad. You can bring the emergency personnel out. You can get the Red Cross out there. You can get the power company, etc. But they're flying over it with a helicopter, and it's really not, basically Mother Nature's going to do exactly what she's going to do. We have seen these situations multiple times before
Many
in
times.
Florida, but there's something about this one that is just so dramatic because it's
wiped out a
consumed.
home.
Yep.
Another home on its way
Yeah.
of being completely
Yeah.
destroyed, demolished.
And if you're the next door neighbor,
You're concerned. I mean, this must be a very terrifying situation for you.
oh, it absolutely has to be. Now, it's interesting. I've told the story here with all your great viewers on News Now in the past, but when my sister moved to Florida, gosh, I bet that's been 8, 9, 10 years ago. One of the very first things I think it was a realtor told her is, if you see a body of water, just assume there's a gator in it. I mean, they are so prevalent that you go into Florida knowing that that is not just a minor risk, but if there is a large body of water, it's quite likely that there will be an alligator in it. So be cautious yourself and be aware for your pets and that type of thing. I think you have to do some sort of calculation when you buy a home in Florida, because everybody's seen the news coverage in the past of what can happen when Mother Nature takes over, when a sinkhole develops. But I think you probably think...
that can't happen to me.
There are millions and millions of people in Florida. It's probably not going to happen to me. Yes, exactly. And then it does for these poor folks, and man, you feel for them.
Right, and I know some viewers on Facebook were talking about, well, you know, I wouldn't want to be a homeowner there. Many people pointing out, though, that, you know, really there are natural things that happen no matter where you live in the country. You know, you could be in Tornado Alley, you could be in California, you know, exposed to some earthquakes. You have blizzards, you have hurricanes. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, you know, that can potentially happen because of just the way Mother Nature works. So I don't necessarily think many people think about sinkholes when it comes to deciding whether or not to live in Florida, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, if you're
They're
having
like,
to analyze
I want to move to Florida, but
Right.
my house could sink, so I'm going to move to Michigan instead.
Exactly.
But then snow.
So, I mean, you won the lottery, you made a bunch of money, you're going to go buy a oceanfront place in California. You realize there is always the risk that that cliff could give way at some point, because we've seen a few of those homes happen too.
Oh, how
but anyway, yeah, hopefully it does not continue to grow that much wider, but there's just nothing that can be said. I noticed somebody was having fun in the chat box saying, Ron, show us that gas station watch. Now this is so interesting to me, Samia.
Yeah.
There, I'm just very casually speaking to you.
Oh, you don't. They comment about your watch all the time. I think
Really?
this is the first time you're noticing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because the story is that I walked into a gas station in not too far from here. In fact, in Georgia, in Dublin, Georgia. Georgia has a Dublin. They have a Rome. You start looking, they have all these other cities they've named themselves.
Can I just interrupt you real quick? Sorry. If you look at the video here, a lot of the viewers pointed out that the boat is in the exact spot that we saw it on the Google image.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting that there's that boat that we were looking at from that Google image street view photo, which I think was taken a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then you see that boat right there.
Yeah.
Still floating atop. Because
Okay, so there's a plus to the whole thing. I mean, everything else is bad, but this boat is floating, and in fact, it really hasn't moved.
Well, because that's what boats do. I mean, boats are able to handle water.
Well, I will tell you a story about that, and this also has to do with this part of the country as well, Samia. So after Katrina, which hit in September, not the following April, but the year after that, like 18 months
So
later.
2007, because
Yes.
Katrina was in 2005.
Yeah, I went down to a little town called Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, and worked on houses there for a few days. Not a huge deal, but I took my son, and it was like a really great experience. But one of the things that was amazing to me was that a year and a half later, the tide, the surge, the swell that came from Katrina in this little town of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, had pushed a boat from the shoreline or the marina to a movie theater, which I'm going to estimate was way over a mile from shore. And the boat still sat in that parking lot a year and a half
Wow.
later. That shows you how long it takes people to recover. I'm sure somebody's got that boat out of there by now. But, I mean, a year and a half in, and there's still a boat just sitting there on its side in the parking lot of a movie theater. As I recall, I don't think that movie theater had reopened. It was just sitting there. But, you know, you would talk to people, and they would walk you through their neighborhoods well away from the shoreline and say, yeah, the water was up to here, you know, and point up to their trees. People just don't realize the real force of Mother Nature in so many situations.
Right. Unless you've
like
experienced
this.
it firsthand, you
Right.
really don't know.
Yeah. So in a case like this, I mean, it has got to just, if you live anywhere in this area, it just has to be pretty frightening and sort of epic, I think, to actually walk up to this sinkhole or
Well,
get
I don't
anywhere
even think
close.
anyone's allowed to get close at this point.
Yeah. And just to see what it's doing. I mean, it's tearing apart a road. It just took 2 houses and just swallowed them up, and we don't know. We don't know how much bigger it's going to get.
Right. What a view, though, Ron. I mean, these are pictures from just moments ago.
Yeah.
And you can see that this sinkhole, very wide. A lot of people can't really tell the depth of the sinkhole. They're like, well, you're telling us it's 50 feet deep, but it doesn't look that deep. They don't
Right.
realize that they're seeing the very top of that home.
I know.
You're seeing the top of that home.
Ugh.
I mean, the whole home completely swallowed. I still can't imagine just everything,
Well,
everything you own.
one of the things I like about what you do here on News Now, Samia, is you jump into those maps fast. You
I do love my maps.
And so do I, but it also gives people not just a little bit of a sort of a frame of reference,
Right.
like we're talking about, it's north of downtown Tampa, but because you can also actually see what this house was looking like just,
Right.
you know, I don't know when that picture was taken, but up until a day or two ago, that's probably roughly what it looked like, and now you see something like this. It's
What a
rough.
sight.
It really is.
What a sight.